Today is Monday, January 27th. We're talking about newly confirmed members of President Trump's cabinet getting right to work. Also, mass immigration raids and new bids for TikTok. Also, where President Trump is making cuts within the federal government and around the world. Plus, how new challenges are complicating California's wildfire recovery. What's different about this year's tax season that starts today? And which two teams are headed to the Super Bowl? Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Trump's cabinet is getting staffed up as even some of the most controversial picks get confirmed. And even more highly anticipated confirmation hearings are coming up. This week, senators are set to question Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, as you know, is the nominee to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. If confirmed, he would oversee 18 agencies like the CDC, FDA, and NIH. Another Senate panel is set to hear from Tulsi Gabbard, as she's being considered as the Director of National Intelligence. This is another position that oversees 18 agencies like the CIA, NSA, and so on. Trump's pick to run the FBI, Kash Patel, has a hearing scheduled this week as well. All three of those hearings are expected to be contentious. But so far, even Trump's divisive picks have been able to get confirmed. For example, the new Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. He was sworn in over the weekend after barely getting enough support in the Senate. Hegseth's nomination was plagued by a series of accusations. Like just last week, his former sister-in-law accused him of abusing his second wife, something Hegseth says is not true. There were also questions about his qualifications, because before this, the largest group Hegseth has managed was 100 people. Now he'll lead 1.3 million active duty service members and nearly 1 million civilians who work for the U.S. military. Many of his Republican supporters expect him to be a change agent for the Pentagon. Another key role was also filled when the Senate approved Kristi Noem for the Secretary of Homeland Security. Noem doesn't have a law enforcement background, but she has been a vocal advocate of President Trump's planned immigration crackdown. And now she's going to be key to helping him execute it. The raids have begun as part of President Trump's new immigration crackdown. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials arrested nearly 1,000 undocumented migrants yesterday alone, and other agencies detained hundreds more. Weekend operations spanned across the country in cities like Atlanta, Georgia, Los Angeles, California, Chicago, Illinois, and Omaha, Nebraska. The White House border czar, Tom Homan, says the main targets are undocumented immigrants with criminal backgrounds. But if law enforcement officials run into other undocumented immigrants along the way, they're also getting arrested. The deportation flights have also begun. At first, there was some pushback, like in Colombia. 2 U.S. military aircraft tried to return Colombian nationals who had entered the U.S. illegally, but Colombia's president turned them away. In response, President Trump threatened to levy a 25% tariff on the country. So then last night, Colombia decided to agree to accept the flights after all. Other countries like Cuba and Venezuela are still largely rejecting deportation flights. Remember, though, the Trump administration is not just sending unauthorized immigrants home, it's also working to keep any more from coming in. So all weekend, more U.S. troops have been showing up to help enforce the U.S.-Mexico border. Also, flights were canceled for refugees who were already cleared to travel to the U.S., and the Trump administration stopped services for refugees already here, at least for now. The U.S. suspended funding to groups that help refugees with housing, job placement, and other needs. The pause will last for 3 months while the Trump administration figures out whether the money, quote, sufficiently benefits Americans. For now, the ceasefire is still holding in Gaza. Hamas agreed to release 6 more hostages this week. On the other side, Israel agreed to let Palestinians return to homes in the northern part of the Strip, and more Palestinian prisoners will be released from Israeli custody. This is still considered phase 1 of the ceasefire. A long-term deal still seems to be far away, but President Trump has some ideas of what he wants to see happen. Over the weekend, he suggested clearing all Palestinians out of Gaza so it can be rebuilt. To make it happen, the president says Jordan and Egypt will have to take in a lot more Palestinian refugees. Problem is, Egypt and Jordan have both been against that idea in the past, citing their security and the economic burden. They also worry about giving Israel an opportunity to take over for good. It's not clear if Trump's idea is an official change in U.S. policy at this point. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department paused all existing foreign assistance. So no more aid is going out anywhere. The order also stops existing contracts that are already being worked on. The only exceptions are for emergency food aid and military funding for Israel and Egypt. This is a big deal since the U.S. is currently the biggest international aid donor. But the Trump administration says it's now reviewing everything to make sure it's all consistent with Trump's foreign policy. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And with that, the whole world will pay tribute to the estimated 6 million Jews killed during the Holocaust during World War II. This year, it marks exactly 80 years since the liberation of the concentration camp Auschwitz in 1945. As a turning point in history, the Holocaust was one of the most visible acts of violence and discrimination. Yet for some people, the lessons seem to fade over time. So the United Nations put this Remembrance Day in place, hoping to educate more people and hopefully keep it from happening again. And several events and exhibitions are planned today. PBS and BBC also have TV specials set to air today. More documentaries and movies are available on streaming. All right, we have much more news for you still ahead. But first, a quick break for our sponsor. If you're ready for a new skincare routine in the new year, one you can actually stick to, then check out OneSkin. Their products are powered by OS1, a proprietary peptide the four founders, all skin longevity scientists, developed after testing 900 other peptides. OS1 works at the cellular level to improve key aging biomarkers, while also reducing the visible signs of aging, including lines, wrinkles, and sagging skin. I also love that OneSkin is free of unnecessary irritants like sulfates and fragrance. I've been using their OS1 face and eye topical supplements, and it's so simple to do every morning and night with just a couple of pumps, so I'm actually using it consistently, and I love how the product feels on my face. Founded and led by an all-woman team of skin longevity scientists, OneSkin is redefining the aging process with their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient proven to help skin look, feel, and behave like its younger self. Get 15% off with the code newsworthy at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code newsworthy. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Invest in the health and longevity of your skin with OneSkin. Your future self will thank you. Okay, now back to the news. Southern California got much-needed rain over the weekend, but with that comes a new threat. As you know, the Los Angeles area is still recovering from wildfires that have destroyed thousands of homes. The rains helped firefighters make progress against the fires that are still burning. Though the heavy rains in dry areas devastated by fires also increased the risk of mudslides and flash floods. So now a flood watch is in effect for the area through this afternoon. Floods can also lead to hazardous debris and toxic ash flows. So officials are telling people to pay attention to emergency alerts and be prepared to leave in a hurry, especially if they live close to areas burned by the fires called burn scars. President Trump toured disaster zones on both sides of the country. In North Carolina, where people are still dealing with the aftermath of a devastating hurricane, the president promised support to help people recover and rebuild. Trump also said he would help California with fire damage, but there, he said the state would first have to impose voter ID laws and change its environmental policies. Trump's press secretary also reminded reporters on Air Force One that Trump prefers to call California's governor New Scum instead of his actual name, Gavin Newsom. Still, the two were cordial with each other during the visit. Also on his trip, President Trump suggested shutting down FEMA altogether and leaving disaster response to the states. Now, to be clear, he doesn't have the power to do that without Congress's help, but Trump did sign an executive order that calls for a new task force to review FEMA and recommend changes. Official government watchdogs were fired late Friday night. We're talking about inspectors general of nearly every cabinet-level agency, like the Defense, State, Labor, Treasury, and Veterans Affairs departments, plus a dozen others. IGs oversee federal agencies to make sure they follow laws and don't misuse their authority or taxpayer money. And they're supposed to be nonpartisan. But in the past, Trump has accused them of being against his agenda. And now Trump says he believes some of them were unfair or not doing their job. So he plans to hire new people to fill their roles. Problem is, both Democrats and some Republicans believe Trump might have broken the law with the mass firings. Federal rules say the president has to give Congress 30 days notice before letting the watchdogs go, along with detailed reasoning. And because of this, some watchdogs who were told they were fired say they plan to show up to their offices to work today. And they're demanding an explanation. There are now several proposals on the table to keep TikTok alive. The Trump administration is reportedly working on a plan to have software company Oracle and a group of investors buy a controlling stake in TikTok. Now, this deal would allow TikTok's current Chinese owner to keep a minority stake in the company, but it wouldn't be able to access the app's operations to comply with the new U.S. law. Others have thrown ideas into the ring as well. Artificial intelligence company Perplexity AI submitted a bid to share power with the U.S. government. Plus, Bloomberg reports China was considering Elon Musk as a buyer. Other potential TikTok saviors who have expressed interest publicly include social media influencer Mr. Beast and Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary. For now, American users can still access TikTok, they just can't download it from app stores. And eventually, TikTok will face a permanent ban unless its ownership structure changes before President Trump's new deadline. It was a big weekend for sports fans. For starters, we found out who's heading to Super Bowl 59. In the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Washington Commanders. In the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Buffalo Bills. And that means the Chiefs and the Eagles are facing off in the big game for the second time in 3 years. And if the Chiefs win, it will be especially groundbreaking, as they'll become the first team in NFL history to win 3 championships in a row. The two football powerhouses will go head-to-head at the Super Bowl February 9th in New Orleans. In other sports news, the top men's tennis player in the world, Italian Jannik Sinner, won the Australian Open for the second year in a row. And on the women's side, an American came out on top. Madison Keys beat out the 2 best players in the world to win her first Grand Slam. Another American woman athlete with reason to celebrate is Naomi Girma. She completed her move from the San Diego Wave to Chelsea in England in a transfer deal worth more than $1.1 million. That makes her women's soccer's first $1 million player. That's it for the main news, so now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Delete Me. Ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? Probably more than you think. Your name, contact info, social security number, and home address, even information about your family members, all being compiled by data brokers and sold online. And this can lead to things like identity theft, spam calls, and more. So that's why I'm so impressed by Delete Me. It's a subscription service I now use to get information about me on hundreds of data broker websites removed and deleted. They sent me a personalized privacy report detailing what info they found, where they found it, and what they removed. And then Delete Me continues to work for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting Newsworthy to 64,000. Text Newsworthy to 64000. That's Newsworthy to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Now back to Money Monday. So today marks the official start of a new season, tax season. The Internal Revenue Service will start accepting and processing returns from 2024 beginning today. Though for most people, the deadline for filing is not until April 15th, just like every other year. The IRS says several updates and improvements have been made to the process this year. One of those is an expansion of the Direct File program that allows people in 25 states to file taxes directly with the government for free. The IRS is also talking up improvements like chat bots online and voice bots when people call the IRS with questions. Another change this year, anyone who earned more than $5,000 on payment apps like Venmo or Zelle will get a 1099-K form to report their earnings. Most Americans who file will qualify for a refund. All right, thank you so much for joining us and listening today. We'll be back with even more news to know tomorrow. For now, have a great day.